I'd like to call the sixth meeting of the Primary and Secondary Education Committee to order. Does anyone have any guests they'd like to introduce?
You go, guys.
Alicia, call the roll.
Representative Bojanowski. Here. Representative Bratcher. Here. Representative Emily Callaway. Representative Josh Callaway. Representative Camille.
Here.
Representative Kleins.
Here.
Representative Doan. Representative Fleming. Representative Grossberg. Representative Hill.
Present.
Representative Jackson.
Present.
Representative Proctor. Representative Rayburn.
Here.
Representative Riley. Representative Tipton.
Here.
Representative Truitt.
Here.
Representative Wilner.
Here.
Chair Lewis.
Here. Going to go a little bit out of order today. The first on consideration will be Senate Concurrent Resolution 43 with Chair West, if he's here. And if Dr. Pruitt will come to the table also. So introduce yourself for the record, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve West, 27th Senate District.
Stephen Pruitt, Southern Regional Education Board.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I thought maybe Representative Tipton would be down here with us as well. He played a significant role. Thank you. Thank you. This is an idea that came out of a SREB meeting last year, I guess, and it's a great new idea brought to us by our fine former Commissioner of Education who now runs SREB, and for an extra $10,000, we pay dues to SREB every year as a state, and for a $10,000 increase in those dues, in effect, what it will do, I'm going to let Commissioner Pruitt get into the details. It will allow us to have 40 extra counselors per southern state at the disposal in case we have an incident like Marshall County, those type events. And it's an innovative program. It's a small cost, and really appreciate Dr. Pruitt allowing us to be involved in it. I think if we do this, he's told me Kentucky will be the first state with a concurrent resolution on this, so we would be a leader in this area. And now I'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. Always great to be in Kentucky. As I was saying to several of you earlier, you thank me for coming, but it's not like it's a big ask. I'm never going to turn down an opportunity to be in the bluegrass. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and in particular to talk about this. I know that you've got an agenda today, so I will try to keep my remarks brief, but I do want to talk a little bit about where this comes from and what it will effectively do. I know all of you are aware of what happened in Marshall County in January of 2018. What probably a lot of you don't know, because I didn't make a big deal about it, was I spent about almost 2 weeks after the incident on the ground there. I took a couple of my staff with me, and we just went to work. And I saw a different side of what recovery is. So let me be crystal clear on the front end. This is not an effort that will be in the way or meant to supplant anything that you guys or state, FEMA, anybody else is doing. When we talk about recovery, we talk about what happens after the cameras go home. We talk about after everybody leaves. And what we found in Marshall was recovery didn't end when kids went back to school. So for the next year, KDE rotated counselors in and out of Marshall County in times of high need, in times of of high stress around key dates. And that's been on my mind for a long time. But what really continues to haunt me a little bit, haunt maybe is a bad word to use. It was a bad situation, but it also was a lot of inspiration. The leadership of Trent Lovett, who was superintendent at the time, Patricia Greer, who was principal, who, in my opinion, may be the most incredible crisis leader I've ever seen in action. But there were 4 ladies that, in my mind, are just heroes to me. So Jill Boone, Jennifer Burnham, Jennifer Jackson, and Cassandra Newsom were the counselors there. And I remember working long hours right after we got there. We went the day after. We didn't go the day of. There was too much going on. And we got there, and our job was just to help, do whatever needed to be done. I mean, we moved book bags, we got food. We just really wanted to be there for whatever they needed to have happen. And these 4 ladies who were hurting just as bad as anybody else were given the charge to create a plan to get school back open with regard to how they would support students. And they came up with a great one. We were sitting in a staff room probably 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night having some of the most horrible conversations you can ever imagine having. Where do you put the memorial? Where do you put it where it's respectful but doesn't get damaged? Who are the memorials for? I mean, it was just I can't put into words the feeling of that. So they come to the table that night with a plan of how they were going to support students and how they were going to support faculty and how they were going to support community and parents. Now, you heard me read out 4 names. And what they felt they needed was 6 stations to be able to support the different areas. And I said, there's only 4 of you. How are you going to do that? And they said, well, honestly, we don't know. So stepped out in the hall, made a few phone calls. We had 50 counselors there the next day by noon, and we started to work. And under the leadership of those 4 ladies, Mary Lee Cooper, who, if you've never met Mary Lee, she's unfortunately retired, but she is an absolute force of nature, who had also been at Heath when they had their incident. They started coming up with a plan of how to do this. Linda Tyree was one of those people. Linda, since all of this happened, has been working with GREC and has developed a way to train around 250 counselors in Kentucky already around what's called PREPARE. Don't ask me what PREPARE stands for. I should have written it down. I can't remember. It's too many letters. But the bottom line is it's a way to support recovery in an education environment that allows for stabilization in the district or in the school and for psychological first aid. It's not therapeutic service. That's not something we can do, but we can do stabilization and first aid. Little side note, which I don't think I've had a chance to tell you yet, I've hired Linda Tyree. Linda will be our director of the Crisis Recovery Network. And the idea here is that we will train, as Senator West said, 40 counselors in each of the 16 southern states. That'll be 640 counselors. Each state will then have access to a network within state when there's something that is maybe considered a more, I hate to say it this way, but typical tragedy, where it's more localized. But as being a part of that network of 640, it will allow SREB to mobilize and deploy counselors from across the 16 states to go into schools or colleges, because this is at SREB we do pre-K to gray. We do the whole range. So when there's a mass tragedy event, whether it's a natural disaster or a school shooting, we would be able to deploy and provide that level of stabilization and psychological first aid for up to the week past the 1 year mark. It'll not be a cookie cutter. It'll be done based on meetings with the superintendent, the principal, and the counselors. Counselors will be required to be at the table. They've got to be a part of recovery, but to lead it when they're hurting as bad as everybody else is just not fair to them.
Motion on the resolution.
Got a motion. Need a second? Second. We have questions. Representative Josh Callaway.
Thank you. I just had two questions. One, in regard to this type of counseling, the protocol for the parents' involvement as far as notification of the counseling. I'm assuming it follows the current process, but I just wanted you to touch on that. And also, last session, I believe it was, we had worked on an amendment to a specific bill that would allow for pastoral counselors to be able to serve in a time of crisis in this situation. Ended up, not going through the last days. Some people were pushing back, and just Senator West, your opinion on that and openness, because that's something I know that we could add to the pool of counselors to be able to help specifically with these types of situations.
I'll hand it off to him in a second just to talk about the details of that, your first question. But the goal is to form the pool first. So you would have the 40 within Kentucky and each southern state. I'm assuming a pastor would not be precluded as long as they had the proper credentials to do that. But this is crisis recovery care. This is not the immediate aftermath. This is for that period after where everyone else leaves, right? And there's still a hole to fill. So I think I partially answered your question. Maybe he can kind of fill in the gaps.
So what's key is that all this runs through the district. So all parent notifications will still be handled through the district. All protocols would be appropriately done. This just gives another layer of support to that school. We would not. That's why I'm really clear that we're not providing therapeutic services, because any parent notification processes in any state would have to be followed, because it's appropriate, right? As far as your question about pastors, the thing that we're wanting to be real clear on is this is in support of any other mechanism that the locals need. So it would not be in lieu of. In fact, when we go in and talk to the district, they may say we have a group of pastors who are going to be giving us support. So maybe that means we don't need to deploy as many people. So it would definitely be complementary of any local effort that's already going on.
Representative Wilner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. This is good stuff. Thank you for bringing this. In the Marshall County, when that event happened, I know that Jefferson County Public Schools, just by virtue of being larger and having more staff, more resources, they sent their crisis response teams to Marshall County, and they have deployed their crisis response folks to districts around the state in times of crisis. Would this mean that there was no longer that need for help from other districts, or would it be complementary and that could still occur?
I think it's complementary, and it's really a conversation with the district and the state. What we find is, especially a lot of rural districts, they can get people to come from larger districts for a period of time, but usually it's a week, and then everybody goes home. Right. And the idea behind this large a cadre of counselors would be to be able to provide that more long term. All the superintendents that sign on to allowing their counselor to be a part of this, the arrangement is that they will not miss more than 10 consecutive days. So it's a way for us to make sure that we're not hurting the district they're leaving, but at the same time providing additional support. In fact, we're real excited. We've been in discussions with Jim Flynn. The Kentucky Superintendents Association is going to be a partner in helping us identify these people and giving us a really good wide range of folks across the whole Commonwealth.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, Alicia, please call the roll.
Representative Bojanowski.
May I briefly explain my vote?
Go ahead.
You know, it's a sad state in our society that we have to even have this meeting and this discussion, but it's a reality. And I think that any and ever support, and SREB has such a phenomenal organization that I'm thrilled to partner with them to make this happen. Thank you.
That is a yes vote.
She never did say that.
Representative Bratcher.
Yes.
Representative Emily Callaway.
Aye.
Representative Josh Callaway.
I vote yes, and can I record my attendance as well, please?
Yes.
Representative Camuel.
Yes.
Representative Kleins.
Yes.
Representative Doan.
Aye.
Representative Fleming. Representative Grossberg.
Aye, and please record my attendance.
Representative Hill. Representative Jackson.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Proctor.
Yes, may I please record my attendance?
Representative Rayburn.
Yes.
Representative Riley. Representative Tipton.
May I briefly explain my yes vote, Mr.
Go
Chair?
ahead.
I just want to thank President Pruitt for your leadership on this and for your compassion and desire to help our students and their families across the SREB region. Thank you.
Representative Truitt.
Yes.
Representative Wilner.
Yes.
Chair Lewis.
Yes. SCR 43 passes with the expression of opinion that the same should pass. Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'd like to acknowledge Representative Tipton's good work on this as well. It was
Yeah.
complete joint effort. I expected him to be down here today, but he seems to be pretty busy. So, but I want to acknowledge his efforts
There
on
you
this
go.
as well.
Thank you. Chair West, if you want to stay there, we'll get on to your next bill. We got Senate Bill 207, and I think you've got a committee sub. Do I have a motion on the sub? Second? Okay, got a motion and a second. Go ahead and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. Here today to present SB 207, School of Innovation Act. This is a work product we've been working on for a while, and this is another option for public school districts. And I'm just going to give a brief, 30,000-foot view of it. What it in effect does is the best example I have, if you have a large district, you have a low-performing school in that district, let's say that school has been through CSI status, let's say they've been through MRI status, and they're still not performing appropriately. This would be an option for that district. They could come in and sign a 3-year contract with an outside third-party vendor. This would all be approved by the local district, by the superintendent and school board, be optional. And once that contract was approved and that particular school was a school of innovation, then they could apply for waivers, and those waivers would remove a ton of bureaucracy that shackles the school and keeps it from innovating and doing what it needs to do. Everything, all the major items would continue to flow within the district and to the school. So transportation would stay the same, school facilities would stay the same, the seat money would flow the same way, and that would all be the same. But this would be a innovative new way where they could change things within that school and maybe think outside the box, do something different. I wish this was my idea, and I thought about this, but it is not. It has been tried and is currently working in a couple other states, at least a couple other states, with what I consider to be great success.
Motion on the bill.
And
I've got a motion and a second. We probably do need to explain what's in the committee sub, though.
gotcha.
Also.
Yeah, explaining what's in the committee sub would probably be pretty important.
Yes.
So in the sub itself is something we've been working on for a little while as well. It's HQIM or HQIR, High Quality Instructional Material. And just as a note, it's interesting, we had Dr. Pruitt here. Many of these ideas we talk about come from SREB conferences, so they're a big part of this. And this is one of them, HQIM. Studies show that it's very commonsensical. Studies show that kids do a lot better when they have high quality instructional material. And in order to get high quality instructional material, you have to research it, you have to vet it, you have to know what's there. Currently, Kentucky, KDE develops a list of instructional material, and superintendents, teachers pick from that list. What this would do, it would allow for a vendor to be the repository of the HQIM. And so there are vendors out there who work with all the curriculum companies across the United States to develop and research what HQIM is. It would be on a website or repository. They would work hand in hand with KDE. They would not control what that is, but they would work with KDE, and they would give it green light, red light. And so KDE would be the ultimate authority of what's on the repository. And once it's on the repository, then it's just a simple place where all teachers and superintendents to go to see what's available to them. It would allow for multiple curriculums to choose from, so it'd be a great choice. To me personally, the best part of this sub is the testing data. So the way that would work is KDE would work with the repository and provide testing data to the repository in Kentucky testing data. And so within a limited period of time, maybe 2 or 3 years, we would be able to see this is touted as HQIM, and we could look at test scores and see, is it actually working for these students in these schools? And so you might have 25 schools using this material, maybe 24 are knocking it out of the park, but you have one outlier that's not doing so well. Well, that would also tell you this is high quality instructional material, but maybe there's something wrong, something's happening at that one particular school. So it would be a diagnostic tool as well to see how things were going in districts. And just once again, the main gist of it and thrust is that it would make sure that all of our schools were using HQIM. Yep.
I do have some questions. Representative Bojanowski.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we can already do schools of innovation, right, in current statute. How is this changing it? What specifically can we do or not do with this legislation?
Sure. We do not have schools of innovation. We have districts of innovation. That's been on statute books for a long time. I'm actually glad you brought that up. That is important. This piece of legislation deletes and repeals districts of innovation. So that goes away. My understanding, what I've been told, is officially there are no districts of innovation. So it's not being used. It's been on the books for a while. I think there's like 3 or 4 districts over the years have tried that, and it's kind of fizzled. And so this is a new approach. One thing I wasn't able to mention, but is important to mention, is this is not just for low performing schools. Theoretically, these schools of innovation could be used by anyone. Magnet schools, those types of things could take advantage of this if the district chose to do that. So I just want to make that clear. It's not just for low performing schools. Yep.
If I may ask one more question?
Go ahead.
Thank you. All right, so on page 3 of the bill, it has language, it's in the top paragraph, that schools of innovation would be granted a waiver from all statutes and administrative regulations that would prevent the district from entering into with an education service provider. So, I mean, there are concerning things about education service providers going on across the nation. Could you explain a statute or a reg that a service provider wouldn't have to follow, and then what kind of guardrails there would be to protect our kids in our districts from bad actors?
Sure. So there's certain criteria that wouldn't allow third-party providers in certain instances. We actually have a provision in it's in the 241, I think, coming, where if you're in CSI status, you have three choices. You have the KDE or the two third-party providers that KDE allows. Okay, and so JCPS has requested that be opened up a little bit, and they could choose those providers. But the way our statute, I cannot point you to chapter and verse, but my understanding is our current KRS would not allow this on its own. There are ways to apply for waivers now, so you can apply for a waiver to the Kentucky Board of Education, but this would be a way. This is a clear path. It lays out the guardrails, like you're saying, and provides some clarity. It would mandate, the Board of Education to approve this if all these criteria are met. There are, within the bill itself, I can't remember what section, but there are safeguards for instance, financial discrepancies at the school. There are three. It's a 3-year contract, but if you have like financial malfeasance and those sorts of things, that school can immediately be shut down. KDE can come in that situation. So there's that basic guardrail. There are, attendance policies, those sorts of things. There's still those guardrails in place. Like I said, Seek travels the same way. Transportation's done the same way. School facilities the same way. All that's kind of the same. And so it would be just, inside the building. If you've got, you're a teacher, if you're sitting there in your classroom and you're thinking, man, this really holds me back. I wish we could do it this way. You could go to your principal and say, let's do it this way. And that, in this case, that principal could say, sure, go for it. We don't have to run it up the flagpole at KDE and with this new idea. So that's the gist of it. Hopefully I answered most of it.
I've already had a motion. Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator West. You used a phrase that I've been saying since I've been up here, think outside the box. We've got to meet students sometimes where they're at, not
Right.
where we want them to be, but where they're at. I was on the Warren County School Board for 5 years, and we had the great idea to come up with a innovation. It's going to be something new. It's called the Impact and Leadership Center. Should be open, new high school. It should be open in about 1.5 years. And really excited about that. I think, it plays into what you're talking about. But I applaud you for coming up with this idea and running with it. And I think, we got to try different things, and this is an opportunity to do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Truitt.
Thank you, Senator West. I guess my question is, about 20 years ago, I went through, in the district that I was currently employed in, we went through a takeover of KDE. KDE came in and kind of took my school over and brought in highly skilled educators and really turned my district around by doing that. So I just kind of want to know, what do you vision this new School of Innovation doing that maybe KDE can't? Or and I, once again, I'm not saying KDE does everything perfect. I disagree with them on some issues, but I can speak firsthand that when a highly skilled educator came into our district and to my school that I currently worked at, it really changed the way we did things. So is that kind of along the same lines that you're trying to just giving us other options, or what's your vision of what this might look like compared to what KDE can offer?
Sure. So KDE, from what I've been told and from what I see, I'm just going by what I've been told, I think they do a really good job with CSI and recovery. And a lot of schools go into CSI status and they come out on the other side, like your school, in better shape. So this is not taking away anything from what they do. But KDE, when they come in, they are still shackled to the book of education regulations that our teachers and principals have to deal with. So, you know, if there's something in, they're not able to be innovative either, is outside that book of regulations. So this would do that. Ultimately, I'll just jump to the punchline a little bit. What I would love to see is you have a large district with a low performing school. A superintendent walks out on the plank and jumps off and takes a chance on one of these things. You get good teachers, good principals, and we learned through an OEA report and conferences and studies. Leadership in the building is the key to the whole thing. Principals and teachers, leaders in the building. That's what changes schools. It doesn't matter if you're in a high poverty area or low poverty area. It's leadership in the building. And so this allows new leadership in the building. You may keep 75% of the teachers that are there. You may remove everyone that's in the building. It's total. It's wide open. In reality, probably anybody would want, you want to keep your high performing staff, but this would allow you to move low performing staff out. It would allow that. But ultimately, if they were to take a chance on one of these things, let's say you have high wealth individuals who want to get involved in education. Those people, those companies, or those people could adopt a school and they could pour resources into that school. So you have your normal SEEK funding, your normal transportation. Let's pick a company. Let's say Toyota. We're choosing to adopt XYZ middle school. We're going to put $1 million or $2 million into that school. You could change the trajectory of that school. And that's another thing I'm thinking with this. This would allow that to occur. Philanthropy within the schools. I know that's a long answer to a short question, but did I hit kind of what you're...
Yeah, can I have one follow-up? So I'm assuming there is cost involved with this. Who pay, like this the individual school that comes in, or the group that who is paying for that? Is that something that the district would take care of? So the district would have to decide to do it and then pay for that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was, like I said, the money would flow the same through the SEEK formula, and it would be the district handling any additional cost, whatever that would be. In some cases, maybe there's no additional cost. Maybe that provider agrees to, we'll do this with existing funds flowing down through. But that's totally at the discretion of the district. They can choose to set up the contract however they wish to. If I could return, Mr. Chairman, just very briefly to Representative Bojanowski's question, I found out where that information is, which may tie into your question. So the waivers, it's on page 1. I'm sorry, I couldn't remember that. But the waivers that you're not allowed to, the things you're not allowed to waive, there's a complete list there starting on page 1. It's A through I, and it's civil rights, federal law, compulsory attendance requirements, participation in the state assessments. There's a list of things that you can't waive there. So those are your guardrails. But
Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few comments, and then I have a question for the senator. been studying this issue for a while. Senator West and I have been talking about this issue for about 2 years now. One thing to remember, this doesn't just happen. This has to be approved by the Kentucky Board of Education upon a request from a local school district. Local Board of Education has to make the request. So it's just not going to happen. As far as the District of Innovation statute, a couple years ago I spoke with a former superintendent who had a school that was in a District of Innovation statute. Those were 5-year contracts at this time. I think there were actually 5 schools that did that. When their 5-year contract ran out, they did not renew those contracts. And the way the current District of Innovation statute is written, this superintendent told me that there wasn't anything in the existing waiver process they couldn't already do, so they didn't continue that. I've studied a lot of the CSI schools, and just did 298 in your committee this week, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that. But I've went back and I've looked at CSI status schools year by year for the past several years. And you would be amazed at how many schools are on CSI status continually for 4 or 5 years. Maybe they're on 2 or 3 years, they go off, they're back on CSI status. And what I see this is an opportunity for a school district to identify a school in that situation and say, hey, what we're doing is not work. Let's think outside the box. And you're absolutely right. The key to this is leadership. In 2023, you and I and several others here attended the Council of State Government South meeting in Charleston, South Carolina, and we actually had the opportunity to go visit and talk to the leaders at a School of Innovation. Could you share a little bit about what we learned and from that visit, what inspired you to move forward with this legislation?
Absolutely, Chair Tipton. We were at Charleston for the SLC conference and had the opportunity to tour one of the schools. It was eye-opening, and while we got involved in this, the city of Charleston school system had a school, and the name of the school escapes me. Maybe you could help me, Mr. Chair Tipton, on that. But it's been a low-performing school for years and years and years and years. And the city of Charleston, South Carolina passed the legislation allowing for schools of innovation. And the city of Charleston said, what have we got to lose? What have we got to lose? This has been low performing for 20 years or more. High poverty, high ESL, high FRL. And within a fairly short period of time, they contracted with outside third-party provider. Within a short period of time, that school was turned around and on track. When you walked into the building, you could eat off the floor. And just in the brief time we were there, you could tell it's a completely different dynamic. They were embracing technology, they had screens and everywhere, and everything was a lot of technology based where they could interact, and teachers were free to use it. Principals, that they could. I guess the key thing, Chair Tipton, that I took away from that is, if a problem came up, they could take care of it immediately. They didn't have to call KDE. They didn't have to call the board office. They could act quickly to take care of a problem, and it allowed for that quick innovation. And there was another thing that I learned is a key thing to this too is their interaction with parents. They were very forward thinking in their approach and reaching out to parents, and so those are my key takeaways.
Let's see what we got here. Representative Wilner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really like a lot of what I'm hearing. Sounds like some good stuff, and I know this is beyond the scope of your bill, but I just have to say this. Schools of innovation and these schools that are in trouble, and then they're allowed to waive regulations. If we have regulations and laws in place that are keeping schools from innovating and meeting the needs of their students, then shouldn't we do something about that proactively instead of waiting till they're in trouble and then saying, well, these restricting things that are keeping you from doing what we need to do? Why do we have those in place?
really like the opportunity to answer your question. It's funny you should ask at this time. We have an education meeting tomorrow, and Representative Shane Baker's House Bill 48 is on the agenda that attempts to do just that. And it reduces red tape and restrictions. And I've had Chair Tipton and Chair Lewis and I have had discussions with Representative Baker. I would love to see a bill like that every year. I will say there's two primary people to blame for that. KDE is to blame for these burdensome regulations, and the other one is the General Assembly. We continue to put more restrictions and more laws and more regulations on our districts as well. So part of the problem is us doing those sorts of things. But there is a mechanism. We can all file bills to go after those. And so I would love to see that as well. But the current book is about this thick of regulations. So.
May I respond?
Yeah, let me make a comment there too. And a lot of that is our federal regs.
That's true. That's true.
There's a lot of federal regulations that we have to go by that are not really good, that affect student outcomes. So that's another one to add to that. But yes, you have another question.
I do. Thank you. And thank you for that. I'm a co-sponsor of House Bill 48. I'm thrilled that you're hearing it. I think it's good stuff. The other thing that I heard before I get to my next question quickly is more funding. So loosen some regs, give schools some flexibility, fund them adequately, and maybe they would do better. But again, that's beyond the scope of what we're doing here. I have questions about the high quality instructional materials. If a school wants to innovate in a way that, and we know they're high quality because it says so right in the name, right? But if they want to innovate in a way that's maybe deeper learning or inquiry based or project based, would they be held to this particular library of instructional materials even if they don't meet the direction of the school's innovation?
I don't believe so. I don't want to promise you anything. I'd have to go back in the bill and look exactly. I do think there are a couple off-ramps. The first off-ramp would be that if a teacher felt that way, they could talk to KDE and lobby for that particular curriculum to be put on the HQI in the repository. That's one avenue. But I do think there's a waiver process in here.
There is a waiver in there. If the district can prove that it is high quality and meets the standards, it could be approved by KDE.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one more very quick one. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have a little bit of heartburn about the third-party vendors. We know there are a lot of really predatory companies out there. And I love the story about Charleston. I've also visited some miraculous turnaround schools, and it's amazing. Yeah. But that's not the way it always goes. So I'm real nervous about the third-party vendors, what that could do to the quality of teaching, where the public funds end up going into private pockets. So I'm real nervous about that piece. That's probably going to keep me from being a yes today, but I really appreciate these, a lot of what I'm hearing.
The only response, I appreciate that. The only response I would have is there is a 3-year contract. So after that 3-year contract with the third-party vendor, if the district is not satisfied, they can fire the vendor. They have that ability to do that. So there are safeguards in place. Maybe they can get a little bit down the road, but not very far. They have a vested interest. Most of the vendors, I believe, even if you're talking about monetarily, they have a vested interest in being there for a long time. The big money for them is staying there for an extended period of time and performing. And really, I don't believe they're going to make that much money just on a simple 3-year contract. That's my opinion.
Representative Camuel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple of questions, if possible. One question that I have is if a school or a district requests a waiver and then decide that can they rescind that request? Is there a mechanism in the bill to allow them to rescind?
I would assume that's possible. I don't remember any provision specifically for that. to me, that's an intermediate. You're not all the way there yet at that stage, so I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be able to back out. I think the drop dead date would be when the contract is signed with the third-party vendor and it's approved by the Board of Education. You know, at that point, you have a contract with the vendor.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's like any other contract. You've signed the contract, and so they have to keep up their side of the bargain, and you have to keep up your side of the bargain. And I think anything, in my way of thinking, anything before that contract is signed, you're pretty much free to back out, I would think.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chair, may I ask another?
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. One of the, and I appreciate so much in this bill, one of the things that gives me heartburn is that a district could have up to 25% teachers in a school that are not certified. That one is a really tough hurdle for me, or something for me to swallow. You know, when I think about, if we're talking about K through 5, those are your foundational years.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a reason why this bill has landed on 25%?
It's a way to be innovative. It's not a mandate that they do that, but it is a way to give someone like this space to operate. You do have good people out there who could fill these slots. We have a teacher shortage. That's another reason for this. We have a teacher shortage, and so we're allowing a carve out for that and for innovation there. This is what I think should happen. To the points everybody's made here, you know, this is no guarantee that these things are going to be successful. There's never a guarantee to anything like this, but if a third-party vendor wants to be successful, they're going to want the best principals and teachers in the building. And so whether they're certified or non-certified, they're going to want the best individuals in that slot. And this was just a way to, once again, pull back a little bit on some of our restrictions on that. So, but I understand your concerns.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chair, may I have one more?
One more.
Oh, thank you. Gosh, because I've got two, so I got to decide which one I want to ask.
Two-part question.
So, when one question came, I'm going to ask this one because it was something that you had said that I hadn't thought about when we were talking about funding. When you said that there could be private funding from a company or an individual, when we accept contributions, when we accept endowments, when we do anything like that, what controls will be in place to make sure that a private company or a private individual is not trying, that we keep political views out of it, or to make sure that they are not dictating what is being taught?
Yeah, that money should flow through normal processes within the district, financial accounting and all that you can't bypass those types of things. So you got some safeguards there. Could someone influence a school?
If they say how they want the money to be used, but a school is desperate for funds.
I got you. That's actually an interesting question. I don't know how to answer that. I guess they could attempt to, but ultimately that would be, you have the leadership in the building. They would have to agree. The district would need to agree with a lot of that. The home office of the district would need to agree with a lot of that. And they have oversight. If there's a lot of that going on, your superintendent and Board of Education are not going to be silent probably if they disagree with what's going on in there. And so if they get too far afield, that contract date is staring them in the face, right? So you may not get your contract renewed if you don't stay within the guardrails of the contract. And with what the district wants, with what the Board of Education wants, with what the superintendent wants. So I don't think there's specific safeguards in that, but I think there are natural safeguards to protect that. Yeah.
Is it trying to find some safeguards? Is that something that we could look at? Because we have some districts that are, I mean, all of our districts, we are so short funded that if somebody's waving millions of dollars in your face, you'll do just about anything to offset other places where you've had to cut. And I just think this is a dangerous place to go.
Okay. I don't think it's dangerous. I'll tell you why. As soon as if this were to pass all the way and we get to sine die, as Senator Schickel always said, we'll be back here in 9 months. So we can. I'm sure if this were to occur, there's going to be a technical cleanup bill for this. This is not the perfect bill, I can tell you that. You're assuming that as soon as we go out sine die, that these are going to pop up everywhere, and so personally, I don't see that happening immediately. So I think we're safe for a little while if this were to pass. But those issues can be addressed in the future. I really do hope we have the problem of a large philanthropist wanting to give $3-4 million to a school, so we can address your concerns. But that to me, that's a problem that I would love to try to see have happen is all this money pouring in. So,
well, let me say this too. I'm gonna make a comment, chair privilege, I guess, but the funding principles and all that, the accounting principles, the money still flows through the district.
Yeah.
So there'll be audits. The audits will be every year.
Yeah.
So remember, the district still is in control. And so all those are still, just like a normal school district runs, this is just going to be one school in a district. So all the funding pieces and all that has safeguards already built in.
Yeah, and the hope is if you get one in a large district and it's knocking it out of the park, it's the incentive to do more of this. And so it is kind of a pilot. It could be a pilot project. So
we've got two more people with questions. We'll need to make them a little short if we can. Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator West, I appreciate you coming today, and you and I have talked for about almost a year on various different issues and such. And I do appreciate your constant efforts in trying to make our schools better. I have a technical question and more of a global question. First of all, you mentioned a very key word, which I have harped on for some time, and that's leadership. And leadership sort of drives a school. And I think we've got some members on this panel that have demonstrated their leadership in their schools, and you can see the fruits of their labor. And so with that in mind, I wanted to ask a technical question. You mentioned about removal of staff and so forth, and how would staff be removed by the state given JCTA's contracts?
So there's current processes in place that would have to be part of the waiver process. So when the district proposed a third-party vendor and proposed going down this path, you would have to apply for waivers, and those waivers would have to be granted. And so one of those waivers would have to be dealing with employment contracts and those sorts of things. So you would have to have a waiver for those provisions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just want to clarify. I can see some challenges with that,
right.
And going down that path. But I do appreciate.
Maybe a school doesn't. Maybe they choose not to waive.
Right.
Those provisions for their school. So
right.
it once again it gives them flexibility.
Okay. And the other question is sort of a global question, and that goes back to leadership. You and I have talked about accountability and responsibility, particularly when it comes to the boards. And looking at the bill, I don't see any provision in there that holds the board accountable and responsible for these schools that, as I mentioned earlier, they come in and they come out of that review. And there's got to be the buck stops here mentality in terms of what's going on. So is there, and if there's something in here that I'm missing, let me know. If there's something, and it is something we can add on to it, maybe not now, but as you said, as Senator Schickel said, we can come back in 9 months. I think we really need to flush that out and try to hold the board responsible, because we have good ones and we have some subpar ones. And I think that's very, very important in order to try to put more accountability for sign-off for documents, whatever.
So we've discussed this, and I've thought a lot about this. Anybody involved in education has thought about this, but this particular bill does not do that. This particular bill is permissive, and so this does not address that situation at all. It doesn't mandate that the district do it. It doesn't force them to do anything. It allows them to be innovative, but they have to choose to be innovative. Now, I did file Senate Bill 5, which did include this School of Innovation, but it had in it more of what you're talking about, which would be a School of Improvement or School of Intervention, which would be the hammer. It would be the last option. It would be a mandate. So that was Senate Bill 5. That's going into the interim. But I have been talking with KDE. We have CSI schools, but we have MRI schools as well. And so I met with KDE. That they'd been out of that business for a while, but there is a federal mandate to once you get past CSI status, to do more rigorous intervention, and they've been doing that work for about 2 years at KDE. And so, what you're in effect talking about is you're not talking about low performing schools. You're talking about the lowest of the low performing schools they're in there continuously, and there is a fairly small number of those across the state. That's what you're getting at. And so this particular bill does not, it could address those schools if a district chose to focus on those schools, but it does not mandate that they focus on those schools.
And I appreciate your answer. And yes, I'm looking at the lowest, but then again, I'm also talking about those low performing schools. I want to try to get a more of a broad impact, because we need to elevate all schools and constantly, look for improvement for all these schools. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further questions, Alicia, call the roll.
Representative Bojanowski.
Yes, I'd like to explain my no vote.
Go ahead.
I'm voting no today because of the language regarding education service providers. I've read extensively about education service providers across the nation, and it's very concerning. For example, Stride K-12, which holds the contract with Cloverport, is a $2 billion a year company with 230,000 students. The senator mentioned that they're not going to just pop up everywhere. I got to tell you, these for-profit ventures are going to try really hard to ensure these programs pop up everywhere once we pass this legislation. Thank you.
Representative Bradsher. Representative Emily Callaway.
Aye, and I want to make sure my presence was recorded. Thank you.
Of course it is.
Thank you.
Representative Josh Callaway.
Yes.
Representative Camuel.
May I explain my vote?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Today I'm also a no, and I appreciate you taking time to explain or to try and address my concerns. I agree with Representative Bojanowski with the educational service providers, but also knowing that we're potentially allowing 25% of individuals teaching in a school to not be certified it's a huge concern. We do have a teacher shortage. It's one that we've created in the General Assembly, and I think that there's ways that we can get around it, but I think we need to focus on funding. Thank you.
Representative Kleins.
Yes.
Representative Doan.
Aye.
Representative Fleming.
briefly explain my vote?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to vote aye, but it's a cautious aye, and I sort of express my thoughts in terms of the leadership and accountability of the board that needs to be injected or entertained, and I'm glad that Senate Bill 5 is going to be discussed this summer. And doing that, I think the waivers and the contracts is going to be problematic that I can see about doing that. There are some bad apples from third-party vendors, I know that, but I'm going to have to rely, even though I talked about concerns of certain boards, there are boards out there that are very prudent and handle those third-party vendors, and so I'm going to have some faith in them going through and maintaining that. So I am an aye.
Representative Grossberg.
Permission to explain my vote?
Go ahead.
I am also a no based upon the 25% not being certified. I do love bills that express innovation and think outside the box, but I also think that we always need to trust the experts. As you all know, because I talk about it all the time, my wife is a teacher. She's a 19th year Spanish teacher. She came to being a teacher through alternative certification, having a Spanish degree, and in fact, she quickly earned her master's in teaching and later on got a second master's degree and is now rank 1. But she came into teaching knowing everything about Spanish and nothing about teaching. She gets the most stellar reviews that I've ever seen of a teacher, but her teaching style has changed over the years by having learned how to be a teacher. She will tell you now in her 19th year, she's teaching a lot less Spanish, but teaching a lot more life skills, a lot more love for languages and cultures, a lot more on how to research, how to think, how to express yourself in writing and in speech. This doesn't show up on the test scores when her students are evaluated, but it shows up when her kids study abroad, when they come back after a semester at college and say that they've chosen to major in education or in Spanish or in another foreign language, when they come back and tell her how they're that much more tolerant and confident of people of other cultures and backgrounds. These are not measurable characteristics when we're evaluating the schools. They are, however, measurable when we're evaluating the teachers, licensed teachers who need to maintain their certifications. So that is where my concern comes from, because I am terrified about the teacher shortage. We need to do a lot more to recruit and retain the best possible teachers. But this bill does not incentivize that. In fact, it kind of creates an escape mechanism to avoid addressing the issue. And I urge, and I'm not trying to put the chair on the spot because I consider him a friend, but I do have a bill that I hope to see here in the interim to bring back the best in class program that would take our top college students in the highest need academic areas and get them those certifications necessary to have them as certified teachers. But insofar as I am scared of a school with 25% of the people who are not experts in what they are doing, I must vote no. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Hill. Representative Jackson.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Proctor.
Yes.
Representative Rayburn. Representative Riley. Representative Tipton.
Yes.
Representative Truitt.
Briefly explain my vote.
Go ahead.
I think this is the working of a great idea. I mean, I really do. I really love the idea of the innovative schools. I love the idea of a school being able, or a district being able to kind of pick and choose what they need to do to improve. If all actors were good actors, and all outside agencies were good and had the interest of our students at heart, this would be an easy yes for me. I also think that a lot of these things that we're kind of contemplating or talking about in this bill is probably already available with a public charter school. You know, I think a lot of districts could probably do these things if they decided to go and be a public charter school, which I think we passed, a couple years ago. And So I think, that's something that, is already kind of along these lines. But once again, I think this bill has a better idea of what that should look like. But today I'm going to pass on it just because I need to do a little more research. And I look forward to working with Senator West on this because I think he's on the right track. We want our schools to do good. We want our schools to be innovative. But we also want to make sure that we kind of have some sort of guardrails up to make sure we're protecting the best interests of our students. So I'll pass.
Representative Wilner?
Briefly explain?
Go ahead.
Respectfully, I'm a no today. Like Rep. Truitt, I love the intent of this. I like a lot of what's in here. I think for me, the third-party vendors is the piece I just can't get past. But thank you for bringing the legislation.
Thank you.
Chair Lewis?
Yes, briefly explain my vote. There's a lot of good ideas in here, and the biggest thing for me is the districts are still in control. Every single superintendent in the state can decide whether they want to do this or not. And correct me if I'm wrong on the bill on the 25% of the teachers. Does it not say they have to have a major in that subject area, or does it?
I think it does, Mr. Chairman. I can check real quick.
So I just want to remind everybody we have a lot of option programs out there right now that start out with someone having a degree, and then we train them and as an apprentice or whatever we want to do to get them ready to teach. Is that the best scenario? Probably not, but I do know that it does have that safeguard where they have to have a major in whatever area, whether it be math, science, or so forth. So I'm a yes. I think there probably are some things in the bill that we can work on. But Representative Riley, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just want to add on to what you said here. As a former high school principal, we're going to have to be creative. Good luck finding a physics teacher. Good luck finding one. So we've got to figure out ways to be creative in finding people to teach. So there's a lot of issues with all these things that we're dealing with, and if we're not going to be flexible at all, we're going to have a lot of trouble. Thank you.
All right, we good? Senate Bill 207 passes with the expression of opinion the same should pass with committee sub attached thereto. I do have a title amendment. I need a motion.
Motion on the title amendment.
I've got a motion, a second. I need a voice vote on the title amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, two pass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.
All right, our next bill would be Senate Bill 120. If Senator Cassidy Chambers Armstrong will come on down, I believe Representative Truitt's going to join her, and we've got Chad Collins from KHSAA. Introduce yourself for the record, and you may proceed.
I am Cassie Chambers Armstrong. I'm the state senator for District 19.
Representative Tim Truitt, District 89.
Chad Collins, General Counsel for the Kentucky High School Athletic Association.
May I proceed, Mr. Chair?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. I had a longer explanation of the bill, but I know that we are short on time, so I imagine the committee would appreciate it if I sort of cut to what this bill does. So this bill is not about creating new legal requirements. I want to be very clear about that. In Kentucky, everyone who has reason to suspect a child is being abused is already mandated by Kentucky law to be a reporter, and this law does not change that. What we have seen is that although the vast majority of our coaches in our Kentucky sports teams are wonderful people, I played high school sports, I had amazing coaches, we have seen sometimes whenever people in that position of trust have exploited that trust and ended up abusing children in our high school sports programs. And a lot of times in those circumstances, someone else on the coaching staff might have seen something, might have known something, might have been able to intervene if they had had better information and training about Kentucky mandatory reporter laws and how to make a report. We also know that outside of the context of just sports, that coaches are trusted members of our community. They see a lot of things. They know what's going on in families. And so equipping them with information about how to report child abuse under the existing law can be a really important tool. So the first thing that this bill does is require that KHSAA, when they are doing their trainings for coaches on a variety of statutorily mandated things, they already provide these trainings for things like head injury, heat injury. This just says that during those trainings, they have to inform coaches about the existing law and make sure they understand how to make a report and fulfill those obligations. I think it's fair if we're going to put a legal obligation on someone that at some point we provide them with the training about how to fulfill it. And right now, for a lot of coaches, they never get that training. The second thing that it does is require that information about how to report child abuse be on the annual sports participation form. Again, we have a lot of statutorily mandated information on these forms. This makes sure that parents and children understand the law and the tools available to them under it. There are 2 changes in the sub. I'll speak to the first, and then I'll let Representative Truitt speak to the second.
Let us get a motion and a second on the sub. I need a motion on the committee sub. We got a motion. I need a second. Got a second. Go ahead. Hold on just a minute. All in favor? All right. Now you can go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members, for adopting the sub. The first is a very common sense change, and I should note that all of these provisions are supported by KHSAA. I don't want to put words into their mouth, but they're here at the table and happy to answer any questions or provide additional information. The first change in the sub just classifies boys and co-ed lacrosse as a contact sport, which means that 8th graders can't play up at the varsity level, which is a really important thing to make sure we're providing for the safety of our students. And I will let Representative Truitt speak to the remainder of the sub, which I think vastly improves the legislation.
All right, the part that we added on my end is, over the last couple of years, we've been talking about trying to increase our workforce and trying to encourage people to get to work, and work at an earlier age. So one of the things that I wanted to put in this legislation is the fact that each school would have posted, because yesterday, actually, I got an email saying, if we're going to let 15-year-olds drive, why don't we let 15-year-olds work? And this come from a student, really, is who it came from. And I was like, well, you can. I think there's things out there that our people do not know. So all that we're requiring is that a school have a poster posted somewhere in a prominent area that identifies at what age that you can work and how many hours that you can work. So it's all about getting people to work, trying to increase our workforce.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? I don't see any questions. Do I have a motion? Oh, got questions. Representative Dunn.
I've got just a question here on the dependency, neglect, and abuse training. I'm probably the only person on this panel who's litigated a dependency, neglect, and abuse case. In fact, I've done quite a bit of them. It's a primary area in my practice. I played high school sports. I definitely saw kids who had troubled home lives growing up. And one of the people that I found to be somebody that could have a very positive impact on that life was the coach. I also know that as soon as I get a dependency, neglect, and abuse case, I'm able to find out who made that report. And so do you think that there may be a chilling effect in coaches being able to develop those relationships with young kids if they're also the people that are being required to make those reports? I think you could have a lot of situations where the parents just say, I'm pulling my kid out of there. I'm not going to have that coach anymore, and they lose a significant amount of that relationship.
Thank you for the question, and I'll take that one. And then if anyone else wants to chime in, please do so. So that's the law right now, is that a coach is mandated if they have a reason to believe that a child is being abused. They are already required by the law to make that report. And what we don't want to do is be creating an obligation that folks can get in trouble for not following that provision of the law, but never telling them how to satisfy it. And so I'm not sure about the particulars of the cases you've litigated, and I'll be honest, this isn't my area of expertise, but I have spoken to folks, and there is a way to make anonymous reports. And you can satisfy your duty under the existing law by making an anonymous report. And my understanding is in those circumstances, often these things there are levels of screening, they protect the confidentiality. Sometimes the cabinet decides based on the report, actually, even if we assume this is true, this doesn't fall in our jurisdiction, this doesn't constitute child abuse, this isn't particularized enough. And in other cases, they look at it and they say, actually, this does constitute child abuse, and this would be something that we would trigger further investigation into.
I'll add that I've made numerous claims as principal, and those are anonymous because, and lots of teachers, lots of bus aides, lots of coaches, it's happened, and I've I'll get a lot of calls from parents upset, thinking that I made them, but they really have no idea. And that's our job, and we are required to report any type of neglect that we think, a kid is in harmful way. So that currently already happens. And as far as I know, I don't know what you have access to as a lawyer, but I know I've had lots of mad parents, but they really have no idea who made those claims.
Just follow up.
Go ahead.
You do have a Fourth Amendment right to face your accuser, and you can get that information, even though they are anonymous report lines. I've done it. One more issue. There already is a mandatory duty to report under the law. We're adding this additional section. Does this potentially increase liability now for a coach or for a school in the event that they don't make a report, or that individual fails to report this issue?
No, thank you for the question. I think that's a really important point. Right now, there is already liability, and what we see is our coaches who are district employees already receive this training when they're hired as a district employee. So they're trained on the laws on reporting and what they have to do to satisfy that duty. But for our volunteer coaches and our coaches in our private school, they have a duty that can subject them to legal liability, and no one ever tells them about that or how to satisfy that duty. And so again, this doesn't change anything about the obligations that people face under the law. It doesn't create any additional liability for anyone. All it does is make sure folks have information about what their obligations are.
Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quick, Senator, a question. Did you say that, I think it's in section 1, that athletes of 7th and 8th grade cannot move up to play high school varsity?
I'll let the KHSAA answer that because I'm not the expert.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, currently in the statute, there is a provision in 156.0702 that says in the contact sports, which right now currently include football and soccer, we don't allow kids to play up from the 7th and 8th grade levels to the varsity program. And what we have is this is going to be the first year that we have sponsored a lacrosse championship.
Thank you.
It's as long, one of the fastest growing sports in the country, and something that folks were really excited about. But what I guess a guy from Kentucky who doesn't have a lot of experience with lacrosse, what I learned is that boys and girls lacrosse are different sports. They're not the same.
And girls are much better, to be honest with you.
Well,
It's a wonderful sport. I coached it for 10 years, girls lacrosse, and it's a great sport.
And what we did in implementing this is we got together with our experts, our sports medicine advisory committee, and there were the same concerns that we have in terms of safety of having that contact sport, potentially having a seventh grader going up against a 200-pound, lineman, and the safety issues that creates. Boys lacrosse and is a contact sport, so those concerns continue to be there. With girls, it doesn't, and so we think adding it is a common sense safety measure that really needs to happen.
Yeah, I appreciate you including I get a chuckle by putting co-ed at girls lacrosse, but I do appreciate you putting that provision in. And obviously, field hockey doesn't apply because there's no field hockey boys in there, so I can understand that being excluded. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. No further questions. I need a motion on Senate Bill 120 as amended by the substitute. Got a motion. Need a second? Got a second? Alicia, please call the roll.
Representative Bojanowski.
Yes.
Representative Bradsher. Representative Emily Callaway. Representative Josh Callaway.
Yes.
Representative Camuel.
Yes.
Representative Kleins. Representative Doan.
Yes.
Representative Fleming.
Aye.
Representative Grossberg.
Aye.
Representative Hill.
Yes.
Representative Jackson. Representative Proctor.
Yes.
Representative Rayburn.
I'm going to pass vote today, but may change my vote on the House floor. Thank you.
Representative Riley.
I'll briefly explain my vote.
Go ahead.
As a former coach, I felt like not only did I have a legal obligation to report anything that was done of abuse to student or student athlete, I felt I had a moral obligation to do that. And if a parent was going to hate me till the end of time because I protected a student, that'd be great. I'm a yes.
Representative Tipton,
Yes.
Representative Truitt,
Yes.
Representative Wilner,
Yes.
Chair Lewis.
Yes. Senate Bill 120 passed with the expression of opinion. The same should pass with committee sub attached thereto. There is a title amendment, 6 I need a motion. I got a motion. Need a second. Got a second. Voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Passes. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members.
All right, our next and final bill, and we will have to be pretty quick on this one because we have to be out of this room 5 minutes ago. So, we don't have to, the regs mute.
Okay.
Introduce yourself for the record, and you may proceed.
Steve Rawlings, Senate District 11.
Jay Ritter, Kentucky Department of Education.
Matt Ross, Kentucky Department of Education.
I've got a motion and I need a second on the sub. Second. Okay, and I'll go ahead and play the sub. Representative Bojanowski, it is leaving in one language, the reporting of physical education. That is the sub. Proceed.
Okay, Senate Bill 68 is a positive step towards improving the quality of education in Kentucky schools. It includes language so that K through 12 schools teach civics with topics such as our constitutional republic, the 3 branches of government, and how government impacts the lives of individual citizens.
Motion on the bill.
We've got a motion and a second. We have any questions? Okay, we got Representative Bojanowski.
Okay, so first of all, I appreciate the addition of literacy in our capacities. I've thought that needed to happen for quite a long time.
Good.
I do have a very brief question. In Section 8, the language repeals, it's on page 21, annual audits of school districts. Could you explain that, please?
You got it. Absolutely. So I'm the Associate Commissioner in the Office of Finance and Operations. I would never be here to get rid of school district audits. This is a separate statute that was enacted back
Could you turn your mic on, please?
Pull it closer, maybe. Back in the early 90s, and it sort of it foresaw a system that there was a unified Kentucky sort of technology system where we could do all these reports and audits. That never really came into place. We now have bits and pieces of that. Under a separate statute, school districts are required to undergo an annual financial audit. There is a audit committee made up of the representative from the governor's office, the APA, the attorney general's office, the Department of Education. They create that audit contract, which has all the requirements of the audit. So this is not really doing away with anything. This is just a statute that has just sort of been sitting around with no real way to comply with it. It's more of a cleanup and sort of reduce some of the, old statutes.
Representative Tipton.
Thank you. Representative Bojanowski got my first question. But in 2024, we passed Senate Bill 2, which included a provision to establish a school guardian program. I see in here there is a provision to extend that out 1 year. Could you give an explanation for the reason
that was
for that?
Yes, sir. That was a Senate floor amendment by Senator Max Wise, and that was his bill was Senate Bill 2 in 2024. So he updated that to extend the years of the guardians.
All right. Seeing no further questions, did we get a motion? We did have a motion on the bill. Alicia, please call the roll.
Representative Bojanowski,
Yes.
Representative Bratcher, Representative Emily Callaway, Representative Josh Callaway,
Yes.
Representative Camuel,
Yes.
Representative Kleins, Representative Doan,
Aye.
Representative Fleming, Representative Grossberg,
Aye.
Representative Hill,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, before we adjourn, I need to record some votes. I'll wait till we get through this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes on this one.
Representative Jackson, Representative Proctor,
Yes.
Representative Rayburn,
Yes.
Representative Riley,
Yes.
Representative Tipton,
Yes.
Representative Truitt,
Yes.
Representative Wilner,
I'm a pass for today.
Chair Lewis.
Yes. Senate Bill 68 passed with the expression of opinion. The same should pass with the committee sub attached thereto. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Thank you,
I've got
committee
some
members.
members that need to record votes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to record a yes vote on Senate Bill 207, and I would also like to record a yes vote on SCR 43. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else need to record any votes? Representative Callaway.
I need to record an aye vote for Senate Bill 68. We haven't seen Senate Bill 120, is that correct? And an aye vote for Senate Bill 120, please.
Anyone else? Representative Kleins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to vote yay on Senate Bill 68 and yay on Senate Bill 120.
I can't wait. Waiting on one member. If he can't come, we're going to have to go ahead and get out of the room. And in the meantime, I'd like to thank the committee. This may be our last meeting of the session, and I appreciate all the discussion and the hard work. And I think we've had a pretty productive session. So again, and our staff, that's right, and our staff, we can't leave them out. If you all can't have it noticed up here, they keep me pretty straight. So that's a task. But again, I do want to thank everyone for their input and discussion throughout the session on education issues that hopefully will help improve outcomes for students, which is what this committee should be about. So again, I think we're going to have to go ahead and adjourn. Meeting adjourned. Yeah, we can't do anything with that because the Senate had to do something in order for us to. So when you see a reg on there, you actually don't even have to discuss it. Yeah, both committees have to do something with it, and they didn't and send it to us. Yeah, nothing. Yeah.